Hello, my friend. Welcome to today's podcast episode where I'm going to be talking about how I have recently significantly reduced my anxiety, reduced my overwhelm, reduced my automatic negative thoughts and the mental spiral that goes along with it. And I am going to be talking about my mental toughness journey today. And I'm also going to touch on it and share a couple supplements that I think have been supportive for my mental health as of recently, very, very simple things. And I'm also going to be referencing a handful of Patreon episodes. For those of you who are not familiar with Patreon, it's actually becoming one of my favorite apps, and I do appreciate the support of those of you who are Patreon members. I want to have a huge extended thank you to those of you who are Patreon members, because my intention with Patreon is not to get rich off of being a Patreon content creator. My Patreon is for I love podcasting. I have the gift of gab. I love to yap to you guys. I love to have conversations with you about what the episodes are about. And Patreon is a way for you to access exclusive content. You can leave comments underneath the audios. You can also sync it up to your Apple Podcast app or your Spotify app if you're like, I don't want another app to check in. When you're going through the process of becoming a member for $5 a month, I'm telling you, you can set it up to be really easy peasy to view within whatever podcast platform you like to do. But I like the Patreon app because now I'm subscribed to 3 to 4 Patreon content creators, and I love reading the comments. I love the exclusive content. It's often more intimate. It's often more vulnerable. At least that's what it is on my Patreon. And it's super, super affordable. With Patreon, it also makes it really easy to cancel. You go into the app and you click cancel, and it automatically does it for you, and you won't get access to any more. And it's very easy for me to manage on the back end. And I do just want to thank those of you who are Patreon members, because your support for the podcast and the extra content means a lot. And it goes back into the cost of what it takes to operate the podcast. So I really do appreciate you for doing that. And I hope you are enjoying the extra and exclusive content that is on Patreon. If you join Patreon, you get access to that entire backlog of content. And yes, my whole Living in Sync Foundations program, so to teach you how to live in sync with your cycle, to work out and eat in alignment with your cycle, to optimize with your body's biology, that's also in Patreon. So there is so much content in there, but let's get back into the things that I've done recently that have drastically reduced my anxiety, my overwhelm, my frazzled feelings, my spiraled thoughts. Let's get into it. Welcome to Living in Sync. This is a wellness and lifestyle podcast for ladies in their 30s. We've got a lot going on, and on this show, we're going to talk about it all. I'm your host, Joelle. If you're into health, wellness, fitness, beauty, fashion, business, career, time management hacks, organization, girl chats, goal setting, mom things, and everything in between, I hope this show supports you in whatever you need today. Let's dig into today's episode. This mental toughness journey of mine all started because I am so tired. I was so tired of being an emotional weenie, or at least that's how I explained it to my best friend. I was so tired of having little things derail my whole day, have little things impact how I treated others, how I showed up for myself, how I showed up as a mom, how I showed up as a wife. And there would be days where just something small would start and spark and trickle into the entire rest of the day. And I was starting to pay attention to those of me or those around me that I knew personally, and those where I'm like, these people have life happen to them. And you guys, next week's episode is going to be really good because one of the people who did help the spark and the start of this journey is one of my clients, Corey Lee from the Corey Lee Show. I edit and produce her podcast. She has played a big impact in my mental toughness journey. And we're going to talk more about that next week. So I'm really excited for you guys to hear that interview. But before I have Corey on the show, I want to talk about my journey and how it's kind of progressed, where I'm at right now, and the things that I've really uncovered. And so my mental toughness journey started because I wanted to call my own bullshit out. I wanted to realize like life happens and there's going to be things that happen throughout the day, and it doesn't have to ruin the whole day. It doesn't have to derail the whole day. It doesn't have to like really emotionally impact me. Even though I am an emotional authority in the human design, that doesn't mean I can let my emotions dictate my whole day. And that is when I really was like, I want to understand and uncover what people who have high emotional intelligence are mentally strong and mentally sound and resilient. Now I can place it on a word resilient. But at the beginning of this, I think I knew the word resilient, but I didn't really understand the essence of it. And the people, man, that I really adore and admire and look at all they've been through and how it doesn't knock them down. I'm like, that's how I want to be. I want to be resilient. And I will say that it kind of started with a controversial book. And if you are somebody who really follows gentle parenting or the book, The Body Keeps the Score, and you're like, oh, this resonates with me, I totally get this. I challenge you to look at the evidence that quote unquote disproves what the theory of gentle parenting is and what the theory of the body keeps the score is. So both of those things, and then what I'm about to talk about is polar opposites. But sometimes, you guys, I like getting information from polar opposite sides, especially in the context of this, because I can kind of say, this feels right for me from that, and that feels right for me for this, and kind of marry it together to make my own. I actually did, and it's launching. It's already on my Patreon, but I actually did a episode on Patreon titled "I'm Not a Gentle Parent." And that episode, I think, gives a full in-depth understanding of it. But it started with reading this book, and I actually did the audio called Bad Therapy by Abigail Schreier. And it really is a lot about the over-therapized, the hyper-therapized, the overemphasis on emotions that leads to ruminating instead of resilience. And while I said her side is very radical, and there were times where I'm like, no, I don't necessarily agree with that. Like, I can see how you're trying to put that into a point to like go along with it. But I did agree with like the over therapized. When I have worked with my therapists, they have been very good therapists in the sense and essence of we have a goal of me not going to them all the time for eternity. We're talking about skill sets. We're talking about deep methods of overcoming and moving on and not ruminating, not ruminating on things. And with the rise in gentle parenting, and this isn't about that, so I'm not going to get into it, but that was the spark of just like, have I been overemphasizing every single emotion that I've had myself? And that sparked me into reading a book. And it's not the best audio to listen to, but it's a great book. So I would recommend this one be a physical read book, whether on Kindle or you get a paper copy. And there's a lot of different books. If you type into Amazon mental toughness, there's a handful of books. So kind of like read about the author and whatnot. But I read Mental Toughness by Annette Tower, and I would listen to it while I was getting ready for the day. And that's when she was talking about resiliency and taking care of yourself and all of this stuff that was just really, really good. So I started that's probably the main thing I did was I stopped listening to books about anxiety and depression and all that kind of stuff. And I started listening to books that were more forward focused, that were about mental toughness, that were about emotional intelligence, that were about like resiliency. And now the book that I am reading is How to Think Like a Roman Emperor. And it's talking about Marcus Aurelius. This was actually recommended to me by somebody else. And I'm absolutely loving it because some of the things that we have covered in here, I'm opening up the note to kind of, it's about the Stoic philosophy and how things are seen as good, bad, or indifferent, and having those automatic thoughts and feelings that come in be seen as indifferent because those automatic thoughts, feelings, and emotions are often fleeting, and not giving them emphasis, accepting the feeling and rising above it, not stuffing feelings, but transforming unhealthy emotions and changing them into something healthy. And then the last like little bullet point I have on this is, describe the situation as matter of facts and not without emotions, because we are in a society that catastrophizes everything. And it's just very interesting. And it might not be a nice, like, it might not be your flavor, and that's a-okay. But what this has done for me is I have seen a significant decrease in my anxiety, in my snappy moods, in how I let things, outside circumstances, dictate my day. And so overall, first thing I did was really kind of reframe the things that I was listening to and put emphasis on practically doing those things. So for a while, when she was talking about ruminating, I was thinking about and paying attention to the things that I was ruminating on. When we were talking, and the chapter was on not having exterior circumstances like the mood and energy of the emotions or the news that comes up be so detrimental to me internally, like seeing them as exterior things and not something I need to attach to and cling to and whatnot. And during this is when we got the news of Beachbody closing down the MLM opportunity. Now, I do feel like I was in a different space and place because it's not a derail for my family and my livelihood like it was for a lot and is for a lot of my peers, but still, that was a huge part of my life. That still was a residual passive income that was coming in. That was still something that I worked for 14 years, you guys. 14 years of my life. And I got that news, and I really was proud of myself in navigating all of that. Because there was times where I would start to see the spiral start to spark and happen. And because of what I'm learning something and then applying it throughout my day was really, really helpful. The next thing I want to talk about is the one day at a time philosophy. And like I said, a lot of this does come from Corey Lee. And Corey Lee is a recovering alcoholic, and she's very much in recovery, working the steps, and the mentality of taking one day at a time and seeing things as only today, doing today's things and facing the things that project today as what to tackle, and not letting the future spark anxiety, fear, doubt, shame, or anything else. And I have a whole audio on Patreon about living one day at a time, or the magic of living one day at a time, and how this really even applied to the day before we left for our Nashville trip. And I got a message about something with my child at school, and then worrying about pink eye when we were gone. And I really was like, oh, I handled it in this way, which was with thought and matter of factness and led me to being very effective in my solution seeking versus how I would have been like, oh gosh, well, of course this is happening because we leave her out of town tomorrow. And how is, my mom who's taking care of the kids going to do this or that? And what if it's this? And he's going to throw a fit if he has to put in eye drops and blah, 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 blah. And I was clearly very much like, okay, no, I'm not going to let that spiral happen. I'm not going to let that story play out. I'm not going to spin and whatnot. I'm going to look at it, matter of fact, today is a today problem. What can I do? I don't want it because we live in a spot, and I explained this all on Patreon. So for Patreon members, I'll be quick and brief, but it's not easy and convenient for me to get my kid to a walk-in clinic, get meds and whatnot, when we had all of these other things that we needed to be doing. And I was like, oh, but what if I just did this and that? And it was easy peasy to get the consultation. And because I kept a sound mind, this is the point I'm trying to make. When we let ourselves get razzly-dazzly and the thoughts start spinning, we start getting anxious and our body starts, like our heart starts racing, and then there's all these things. Blood leaves brain. When blood leaves brain, it goes into the limbs so you can run fast. And that is not helpful in this day and age. We do not need blood to leave brain. We want blood to stay in brain so we can make smart choices. Blood stays in brain when you are in a good, neutral mental headspace and you're seeing this situation. I talked about it in the Stoic philosophy note that I was just reading to you guys, that when we describe situations as matter of fact without emotion, blood stays in brain. Blood stays in brain causes us to think more clearly. When we can think more clearly, we can come up with more effective solutions. But when we get frazzled, when we get razzled, when we get out of sorts over little things, brain is not thinking clearly. So I take one day at a time. When something comes up, I am focused on one day at a time. And I have more audios on this because I'll just run through what has been recent into Patreon. It is the I'm Not a Gentle Parent, the magic of living one day at a time. I have a rant in there of not being quote unquote made for more, but quote made for right now, because that was played off of my conversation with my friend Lauren Francois. I have another one on titled Resilient and Unbothered, not absorbing. All of that is around you. And then there's a couple other petite fat loss tips, assessing alcohol consumption. And then on September 24th and September 16th, I've got 2 mental toughness ones on there. One is titled, I'm Done Being an Emotional Weenie. And the other one is mental toughness. And that one is on the stopping ruminating and be resilient. And then I also have a really good guided prayer in there called the poker prayer. And that's really where you are giving it all to God. It is a guided prayer to surrendering it all to God. And I'm so proud of that one audio. Like that one audio is worth the $5 a month. But that is really what I'm doing, is piece by piece, I'm taking in and understanding these different ways of thinking and doing my best to apply them. And I'm now identifying myself as a mentally tough person. I'm no longer available for letting little things bother me. Sick kids, I'll deal with it. One of my business incomes sends an email on a Monday, September 30th that says, you're done January 1st. Okay, fine, whatever. Their affiliate opportunity or their affiliate model is a joke. Okay, I'll find something else. And I'm no longer letting things dictate and derail me, okay? Another thing I've got 3 other things to give you, but the mental toughness piece is heavy hitting because I put most of the work in on that. Another thing was I've really dialed down my supplements. I talked about in my Patreon. I got blood work done in July, and I then stopped taking supplements that were no longer shown as what I needed, but I started emphasizing what I was lacking. And one of those supplements was creatine. My body's natural creatine was extremely low. So I, since July, have been taking a scoop of creatine. I'll either put it in my protein shake or I'll mix it in with a big glass of water and maybe some electrolytes, but I am making sure I'm getting in my scoop of creatine every single day. And creatine is actually has muscle benefits, but it also has been shown to improve your cognitive function. Now, when we think of mental health, we don't think like, oh, cognitive function and mental health, but when your brain is operating in and has that support, I don't know. I know Joe Rogan and Andrew Huberman did a podcast together, and Andrew Huberman of his podcast, he talks a lot about creatine even for women. And it's been kind of crazy where it's like, it's definitely a supplement. You've got to be consistent with it, because if you're deficient, it takes time to build it up. And then you have to be consistently making it or consistently consuming it to keep up with your creatine levels for them to stay at a certain level, from my understanding of how to take creatine. But I've noticed a lot of really cognitive improvements in the last months since July of taking it. And I've got to give a little credit where credit is due. The next one is, especially in the fall and winter, you guys know I tend to switch my hormone support supplements to a supplement called OvaMoon, because it is really well-rounded. It has a good amount of vitamin D. It has hormone supportive herbs in it. It has literally B vitamins. Like, it's seriously, you take 3 a day and that's it. And it's really good, really supportive, really well-rounded. The vitamins are also good quality. They're all methylated vitamins, which, if you don't know a lot about the MTHFR gene mutation, my friend Lauren actually was the one who kind of like introduced me into understanding that. That's very important to have good quality methylated vitamins. And when I was like, I've been recommending OvaMoon for years. I remember gifting OvaMoon to some of my friends in... was that like end of 2020? And I'm still taking it as my like fall winter supplementation. And I think there's just, with the well-roundedness of the multivitamin and it being hormone supportive, I really, really, really love it. So those are the 2 supplements that I give energy and mood credit to. Now, I'm not saying it's like a cure-all. I'm not saying I'm against medication if that's what you need and supportive. There have been times in my life where I've needed to take medication. That's been logged on this podcast. But those supplements, I think, are really, really, really supportive. And then I've been getting more social. So I work from home. I work out from home. I've been home a lot. But in the months of specifically the summer, we're with friends and family out on the lake. My weekends are so family friends coded that I show up and I'm a boss during the week. I get my work done. I show up, I do the dang thing. And then on weekends, I'm like wifey, mom, all things. I'm obviously a wife and a mom on every day of the week, but you know what I'm saying? I take the pressure off of myself and I'm just like, we're enjoying this day. We're just focused on this day, on this restoration. And if we have something with friends, or if we're going to see family at the lake, or in the September, October months, it was like, at flag football, I was saying hi to people. We're involved in different community events, and I'm having a couple friends who are local that have kids in school as well come over for a coffee date on whatever morning. And our friend group went to Nashville. So it's everything from like a simple, hey, you want to come over Tuesday for coffee right after you drop the kids off, to we did a hayride with friends yesterday and a bonfire, and that was so fun. There's just a total mix of things. But I really think, like, even as an introvert, it's important to be around people and be around community. So try out a new class, join a book club. Yeah, you're going to feel weird and awkward if you're not super close to that friend group, but how you become close to people is you get involved. And it's even good for your mental health to have acquaintance friendships where maybe you're not deep dive in conversation with each other, sharing your life secrets or sharing the little things that's going on in your life and venting. It's healthy also to have friendships that are surface level where you talk and you communicate and have everything in between. But I know for myself, in the times where my mental health was its worst was when I was isolating myself. After we became parents and we had a baby that was suffering from silent reflux and screaming, we didn't invite people to come over because we had a screaming baby, and it's like, now I have to entertain people while I try to console a sleeping baby. And then one of the times I went into a room because Bryce was screaming so much that I locked myself in there, and then I felt so sad because I'm like, okay, well, I just left the room so the guests and my husband could talk and socialize, and now I'm isolating myself. And then other times in my life too, where it's like that isolation, man, that's when the dark comes for you. That's when the devil comes for you. That's when your vulnerabilities get attacked because you're isolated. So if there is a piece and an element and a zest of life missing out for you, it's going to take some courage on your part to step up and step out and find a tribe and find, you start going to the same group fitness class every Saturday morning, you're going to start to see the same people and you're going to start developing friendships. I remember in late 2019 to early 2020, so before the pandemic, I was bringing the kids to the gym so they could go to the daycare and I could go to the group fitness class. I did my own workouts, but I started going to that group fitness class because I enjoyed being around other moms and getting to know them. Then eventually the moms and I would do the workout class and we'd go sit in the sauna for a little bit. And as we sat in the sauna, we started to chit chat. And some of those ladies, I still catch up with them on Instagram here and there, So show up and step out. Those people weren't necessarily like quote unquote lifelong friendships, but they are still so kind and generous and fun conversing with them. I mean, there was no shade and fallout of the friendship. It was just proximity of like, I live here, they live there. We no longer go to the gym anymore. You know what I mean? But we can still cheer each other on when we see each other's posting stuff on social or whatnot. So not every friendship needs to be this like high. And plus, don't put expectations on your friendships. That is the fastest way to be a bad friend is to have these expectations and have these types of things. Like live and let live. That's another thing I talked about. That was in my alcohol consumption audio on Patreon. Was one of the greatest gifts I learned as a young kid was I am not in control of anybody else's choices, decisions, or how they act. That is not my job. That is not my fault. And that is not something I can dictate or control. I am only responsible for me. And that can be applied to so many things. That can be applied to your marriage. That can be applied to your friendship. That can be applied to just everything. Is you are only in control of you. And having expectations of others is the fastest way to feel empty in your relationships and push people away, in my opinion. The last thing is getting ready. The physical act of doing my hair, doing my makeup, and putting on clothes that I feel good in or trying different style, it's incredible. My client, Corey, once again, you will hear from her next week. She was the first person I heard say, suit up and show up. And I remember when I got back from Nashville, I got a cold. And so on that Monday, I was feeling really yucky and snotty and all of this, but I had to suit up and show up and do work. So I did my hair. I put on a little makeup. I did skip my workout that morning. I said, I got to take a rest day. So I skipped workout, but I got up and I got ready and I got dressed and I got to the tasks of my today things. And doing the tasks of my today things and showing up for the things for that day led to an opportunity that happened. And that wasn't the only first time. Actually, the day after, so September 30th was the announcement of the Beachbody news. I didn't let it hit me hard, but it kind of sat unsettled with me for a while. And I will have an episode coming out on it once I've gathered all my thoughts and have had time to process and outline it in a constructive way. But after that news, I was like, oh my gosh, like there was panic happening on social media, and I was wanting to follow and see what this person and that person was doing. And, it was kind of like that stream of income is going to be gone. Like, do I need to work my butt off to recoup it? Do I need to blah, 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 blah? And I did have a little bit of spiraling, and I thought to myself, that Tuesday, I was like, you know what? I could just wear my sweats, stay in bed, and just observe this or process this or whatever. And I was like, nope, I'm going to suit up and show up. So I showed up. I worked out in the morning. I got ready for the day. And when I was in the tasks of that day, another opportunity came in. And I'm not saying opportunity happens every single day for me. It doesn't. But I have seen that in the times where it was not the ideal to show up, but I did it anyway, gosh, some good things have come from it. And culture is telling you to do the opposite. Culture is telling you, you don't feel like it, do what feels good. If you don't feel like showing up, maybe take a day. And I'm not saying burn yourself to the ground. I think where hustle culture went wrong was burn yourself to the ground, achieve more, go bigger. I'm not about that. I'm not about that at all. But I think sometimes, and this also comes from that book of Bad Therapy, that accomplishing a task is good for your mental health. Running an errand for those moments of deep depression, for those moments of deep anxiety or paralysis because of overwhelm, how you get out of that is taking one step at a time and seeing those steps you're taking as micro accomplishments. One day at a time. Do what you can today. Show up how you can today and carry on and see what comes forward. And I know, and culture has its emphasis on it. Nope, we're only showing up when it feels right. We're only doing the things when it feels good. And if that feels right and that feels sound and solid, and maybe you need an era of that because you've just been in the grind for so long. But I'm saying we shouldn't have this sway of it's either grind and kill yourself to the work yourself to the bone, or don't do anything and let it all flow and da, da, da. It's I show up with both. In my day-to-day, there is both hustle and flow. And I suit up and I show up when I don't feel like it. But sometimes when I feel like I'm really, really, really dragging, I take a rest and live in both. And that is depicted day by day, right? But I'm also not going to let my emotions dictate it, because if I only operated off of my emotions, I really wouldn't do a whole lot. I wouldn't feel good. I wouldn't have forward motion and progress like I'm having now in life and business and health and fitness and in my marriage and with my kids. And I truly, truly, truly believe that has come from getting ready, suiting up and showing up and being prepared. I'm sitting here in my office and I've just been recording. And after I record, I'm going to be doing podcast production stuff for other clients for episodes I need to do for them. I'm wearing jeans. I'm wearing a sweater tank top. And I have this cute little button-up jacket, not an outdoor jacket, but kind of this. I don't like wearing cardigans really. So this to me is the equivalent of a cardigan. I suited up and I showed up. When my kids get home from school, I'm oftentimes putting my sweats on because I'm in mom mode. Like I'm in mom mode. I'm cooking dinner. I'm cleaning. Like I kind of change. And when I'm working out, I obviously wear my workout clothes. When I'm going to go for a walk, I put on a pair of my leggings and I go for a walk. So suit up and show up for the task at hand. Suit up and show up for the thing you're tackling, right? So that's really the 4 things that I've done to, and how I have seen my anxiety decrease significantly is I've started to consume books that have been about mental toughness, mental resiliency, and applied it as I'm reading. I'm not just reading it as a checkbox or passively. I'm really trying to lean into it and apply it. The 2 supplements, creatine and OvaMoon. Third thing, getting social, being around community, whether it's deep friendships or acquaintances, family, friends, doesn't matter. Get in the human world. Get out of the social media world and get into the human world that is around you. And if you're like, oh, I live in a small town, stop. I live in a small town too. I live in the Midwest. I have to allocate for a lot of things because of the small town that I live in. Not allocate, but like I have to adjust a lot of the advice that I get from like experts. So like, how does that work in the real world of small town USA, right? Instead of making excuses, how can you make it work for you? Get social, be around community. And then 4th thing, get ready. Suit up and show up for the day that you want to have, not letting feelings drive the ship, which cause you, like, if it's the feeling is sparking the action, and then the lack of action leads to the lack of outcome. But if you want to see forward progress in your life, it's like, you're not going to feel like working out every day, but moving in some way every day is good for your body. And some days it's going to be different than others, right? But movement is good for your body, no matter what day of the week it is. And so that's how I would say suiting up and showing up and applying and getting ready for the day. Because sometimes on day 1 of menstrual phase, like black sweatpants and a black hoodie, that feels like the best way to suit up and show up, right? But that's not every day, okay? I hope this was helpful. If it was, please share this episode. Send me a message on Instagram, what you loved. It helps me. And next week's episode is with my client, somebody who I've referenced, somebody who I quote, somebody who I've just grown in admiration of, is my client, Corey Lee of The Corey Lee Show. So we'll talk to you next week. Bye. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you loved what you heard or you want to share your favorite episode topics, please leave a rating and review. This helps the podcast growth and gives people an idea of what the podcast is all about. Something new and exciting that I wanted to share with you before we go is that we now have a Patreon page. This has replaced the Feminine Edge collective community in a cohesive place that is easier for me to manage and cheaper for you. If you are interested in our monthly classes, exclusive day in the life vlogs, Bible studies, community Q&A, and more, go to patreon.com/livingInSync and join for just $5 a month. Check out the show notes for any links or details of things referenced in today's episode, and I look forward to chatting with you in the next one.